Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're doing the Supreme Court Decision Timeline Episode 5. Today we're going to go 1872 to 1892. But before we get started, I have a message for you. I'm going to be starting a brand new 2024 series. It's going to be called the 2024 Campaign Trail. And so essentially it's going to be you guys will decide who's running, who wins the caucuses and primaries, as well as who's going to win, the election, who's polling where and when. So what all you have to do to participate is go down in the description below, go down to a Google form, and just fill it out. You fill out what party you identify. Are you Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, Libertarian, or do you not identify as either, or none of the above, and just go to other and then type in what you identify as, whether it's unaffiliated or etc. Then what's your ideology? It goes anywhere from the far right to the far left. Or do you see yourself in the center of everything? Not so much center right, not so much center left. And then you'll go down here to choose not only just 10 Republicans, but 10 Democrats. These could be 10 individuals you think is going to run, 10 individuals you would support, or just 10 individuals you would hate. Well, let's get started with this. So we're going to start off as we always do. We're going to take a look at what the current Supreme Court is as we go into these years. Right now it's an 8-1 conservative court, with the only liberal justice being John Archibald Campbell. So let's get on with it. 1872, President Hannibal I would establish Yellowstone National Park. The Great Boston Fire of 1872 would occur. The Fire of Boston. A lot of people would know that, especially if you're in Massachusetts. The Indian Wars would begin in this year, which would last for most of this 20-year cycle. Republican Senate, as well as the 1872 vice presidential election, where Republican Senator Henry Wilson would defeat Democrat Congressman Horace Greeley 286 to 66 to become the 16th vice president. And yes, Horace Greeley would still die. Can't really change that. 1873, Associate Justice Salmon P. Chase would pass away, and then Joseph P. Bradley is appointed to the Supreme Court by the House to replace him. President Hamlin I would pass the Comstock Act, as well as the Coinage Act of 1873, but there would also be the Panic of 1873 as well, which would put the country into a bad recession. 1874, Associate Justice Alfred Conkling would pass away, where the House would replace him with Ward Hunt. The U.S. and Hawaii would sign a treaty granting exclusive trading rights with one another. 1875, President Hannibal I would pass the Civil Rights Act of 1875, as well as the Page Act of 1875. However, Vice President Henry Wilson would pass away during his first term, whereas Secretary of State Hamilton Fish would succeed up the line to become the 17th Vice President. 1876, Republican Vice President Hamilton Fish would defeat Democrat Governor Samuel Tilden 185 to 184 to win re-election, but he would lose the popular vote, similar with Rutherford B. Hayes. 1877, there would be the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, as well as President Hannibal I declaring that the Civil War has officially ended. If you can't tell in this timeline, the Civil War was very different. There was no secession, so no need for Reconstruction, but war and bloodshed would last a lot longer. 1878, President Hannibal I would enact the Bland-Allison Act, as well as the Posse Comitatus Act, but there would also be a yellow fever epidemic. 1879, Associate Justice James Dandridge Halliburton would pass away, but the House would replace him with Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar. Pretty cool name, in my opinion. But this year, the Long Depression would end, caused by the Panic of 1870... It was 1873, I'm pretty sure. 1880, Muscle Slough tragedy would happen. We will also have the 1880 vice presidential election, where Republican Vice President Hamilton Fish would defeat Democrat General Winfield Hancock 214 to 155 to win re-election. This time he would win the popular vote. 1881, the Indian Wars would end officially. The bloodshed between Americans and the natives would end in this year, or at least for the most part. President Hannibal I would pass the Edmunds Act, as well as the Immigration Act of 1882. Edmunds Act, of course, dealing with polygamy. 1883, Vice President Fish would pass the Pendleton Civil Service Act, which means that we are now going by a merit system when the president appoints the cabinet and federal officials. President Hannibal I would authorize the use of steel vessels in the Navy. 1884, Associate Justice Noah Haynes Swain would pass away, and the House would replace him with Peter Watkins Hardin to the Supreme Court. The Cincinnati riots of 1884 would take place. President Hannibal I would pass the 16th Amendment, which was minimum wage in 8-hour workdays. There would be a call for this. There would, protest, the riots, all about this, and the president would sign off on this and make it an amendment. And then we have the 1884 vice presidential election, where Democrat Governor Grover Cleveland would defeat Republican Speaker James Blaine 219 and 182 to become the 18th vice president. 1885, there's really nothing noteworthy to add. 1886, Associate Justice David Davis would pass away, as well as Associate Justice Ward Hunt. And the House would replace them with Hal Jackson and Henry B. Payne. There would also be the Sorialo riot of 1886 and the Carrollton Massacre. In 1887, President Hannibal I would establish Pearl Harbor as a naval base, as well as pass the Interstate Commerce Act and the Dawes Act. 1888, the Great Blizzard of 1888 would occur, and then we have the 1888 presidential election, where Democrat Vice President Grover Cleveland would defeat Republican Senator Benjamin Harrison 204 to 197 to win re-election. 1889, Associate Justice John Archibald Campbell would pass away, and he's replaced in the House by Horace Gray to replace him. And President Hannibal I would sign the Enabling Act, which would make several territories become states. And there's also the Great Seattle Fire. In 1890, Chief Justice Samuel Freeman Miller would pass away. And remember, whenever the Chief Justice position is vacant, the Senate replaces them, not the House. And the Senate appoints Samuel Blatchford to the position of Chief Justice. President Hannibal I would sign the Sherman Antitrust Act in this year. In 1891, President Hannibal I would pass away, and the Supreme Court would then go on to select Indiana Senator Benjamin Harrison, the guy who lost to Grover Cleveland just a few years prior, and he would become the next president, becoming President Benjamin I. President Benjamin I would start off by passing off the International Copyright Act of 1891. 1892, Associate Justice Joseph P. Bradley would pass away, and the House would appoint Melville Fuller to replace him. The Homestead Strike would happen, and then we would also have the 1892 election, where Democrat Congressman Adlai Stevenson would defeat Republican Ambassador Whitelaw Reid and populist Congressman James Weaver. Populism would still happen in this year. It would be a populist movement, though they did get their 8-hour workday and all that. There's still this huge movement of, hey, we still need things corrected. And Adlai Stevenson would become the 19th vice president. And of course, we end this video off by showing off the current Supreme Court. It went from an 8-1 conservative court to a 5-4 liberal court. Let's just name off the justices. Chief Justice Samuel Blatchford, Associate Justice Horace Gray, Associate Justice Stephen Johnson Field, Associate Justice William Strong, Associate Justice Melville Fuller, Associate Justice Howell Edmonds Jackson, Associate Justice Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar, sounds like I'm saying a curse on someone, Associate Justice Henry B. Payne, and Associate Justice Peter Watkins Hardin. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the Chaotic One saying, peace.